It was one of those soft spring afternoons when the sun lazily draped golden ribbons over the garden. The kind of day that invites you to slow down, to breathe, to sit back, and just be. I was in the kitchen, humming an old tune while chopping fresh vegetables for lunch. The scent of basil and rosemary mingled in the air, weaving with the faint hum of the cicadas outside the open window. My grandson, Jake, was coming over. Jake, who's 23 now, had grown into a man but still carried that restless spark in his eyes, the same one he had when he was a boy chasing butterflies in my backyard. He called earlier that morning, his voice a bit hesitant, something I caught but didn't press. He said he'd stop by around noon for lunch, and I found myself looking forward to it in a way I hadn't expected. He showed up right on time, like he'd always did. Tall, a little scruffy from his latest hiking trip, wearing that old faded leather jacket I once gave him for his 18th birthday. When I opened the door, he smiled, but there was a tension there, barely noticeable, but it was enough to make me wonder. "Hey, Grandma," he said softly, stepping inside, his hands full of wildflowers he picked on the way. "Thought you'd like these." I took the bouquet and inhaled deeply. The flowers were a little rough around the edges, the kind you find by the roadside or along the trails. Simple, honest, and somehow perfect. "Thank you, Jake. They're beautiful," I said, my heart warming a bit more than usual. We settled at the kitchen table, where the sunlight poured through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the worn wood. I served the lunch, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and that green salad with lemon vinaigrette he always liked. We ate slowly, sharing stories about his job at the bookstore and my volunteer work at the community center. The kind of small talk that builds a bridge between generations. But beneath it all, I sensed something unspoken, something Jake was holding back. After dessert, a slice of apple pie fresh from the oven, Jake shifted in his seat. He looked at me with those deep brown eyes and took a breath, the kind that makes you hold your own for a moment, waiting. "Grandma," he said finally, his voice lower than before, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his, trying to send a little calm through the gentle touch. "You can tell me anything, Jake." He smiled, a bit of the old boy's mischief returning, but his eyes were serious. "I've been thinking a lot about life lately, about who I am and where I'm going, and I guess I wanted to share it with you first." I nodded, encouraging him to go on, though my heart pounded like it was running a race. "I'm different than I used to be, or maybe different than you thought I was. I'm gay, Grandma." The words hung between us, fragile and raw, like the first tentative buds of spring. The room seemed to hold its breath. I blinked, then smiled, a warm, genuine smile that came from somewhere deep inside. "Jake, thank you for trusting me with that. It means the world to me." He looked surprised, relief flooding his features. I wasn't sure how you'd react. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, squeezing his hand, "there's nothing that could change the way I love you. Nothing." We sat there for a long time after that, talking about his hopes and fears, about the world he's stepping into, about the people he loves, and the ones who love him back. I could see the weight lifting from his shoulders with each word he spoke. Later, as he got ready to leave, Jake stood by the door, a softness in his expression that I hadn't seen in a while. Then he said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Grandma, you've always been the one safe place in my life. I hope I can be that for you too." And just like that, everything changed, not because of what he said, but because of what we found together in those quiet moments. Understanding, acceptance, and a new kind of closeness. As the door closed behind him, I looked out the window at the flowers on the sill, their petals catching the light like tiny promises. That day, over simple lunch and whispered truths, I discovered something profound about love and family, something I'll carry with me always. After Jake left that day, the house felt quieter than usual. Not empty exactly, but like it was holding its breath, waiting. I stood by the kitchen window, tracing my fingers over the condensation gathering there, watching the garden outside where the spring sun was still soft and warm. The flowers Jake had brought were sitting on the table, a little wilted now, but still bright with color. Somehow, they seemed to hold the whole afternoon's weight. The laughter, the silence, the things left unsaid, and the things finally spoken out loud. In the days that followed, I found myself thinking about that moment when Jake told me he was gay. Not because it changed anything in how I saw him. He's my grandson, and I love him, full stop, but because it opened a door. It was like he'd invited me into a room I never knew existed, and suddenly I wanted to understand everything about that world, that part of him I hadn't known before. I started asking questions, not the nosy kind, but the gentle ones, the kind you ask when you really want to listen. One evening, while making tea in the quiet of the kitchen, I called Jake. He picked up after the third ring, his voice a little surprised but warm. "Hey, Grandma. Didn't expect to hear from you." "Well," I said, smiling into the phone, "I guess I'm full of surprises today." We talked for a long time. He told me about his first crush, his fears about telling others, the kindness and cruelty he'd met along the way. I shared some stories from my own younger days, about times when I felt like an outsider, about how love isn't always easy but always worth fighting for. It wasn't always comfortable. Sometimes there were silences or misunderstandings. But what surprised me most was how those conversations made me feel closer to Jake, like we were weaving a new kind of thread into the fabric of our relationship, stronger and more real than ever. One afternoon, a week or so later, Jake came by again. This time he brought someone with him, Michael, his boyfriend. I remember how my heart fluttered just a little when I saw Michael step through the door, tall and kind-faced, his smile shy but genuine. They settled into the living room, and I poured some iced tea, the clink of the glass sounding loud in the peaceful room. The air smelled faintly of jasmine from the vase on the side table, the sunlight slanting through the curtains warming the space. We talked about books, music, and all those little things that fill up the spaces between us. Watching Jake and Michael interact, the way they looked at each other, small smiles exchanged, hands brushing, felt like witnessing something beautiful and new. I could see how happy Jake was, how much lighter his shoulders seemed. At one point, Michael caught my eye and said quietly, "Thank you for being so welcoming. It means a lot." And that's when it struck me just how important acceptance is, not just for Jake, but for both of them. For love to grow, it needs room to breathe, to be seen and cherished without judgment. That evening, after Michael left Jake and I sat on the porch swing, the stars starting to prick the dark sky, he turned to me and said, "Grandma, I was so scared of losing you when I told you. But instead, I feel like I found you all over again." I hugged him tight, feeling the years between us melt away in that simple moment. "You'll never lose me, Jake. I'm here. Always." As the days turned into weeks, our lunches became a regular thing again. Simple, unhurried gatherings where stories were shared, laughter echoed, and sometimes tears came too. I realized that this unexpected chapter in our lives had given me a precious gift, a deeper connection with my grandson and a richer understanding of who he is. And through that, I learned more about myself, about love and courage, about opening my heart wide enough to hold all the truths, no matter how surprising. It wasn't just Jake's world that was changing. It was mine too. There's something about twilight that always feels like a threshold, the time when the day's light fades and the night's quiet settles in. On one of those evenings, a few weeks after Michael had first visited, I found myself sitting alone on the porch swing, wrapped in a soft shawl, the cool breeze carrying the scent of blooming lilacs. The sky was streaked with purple and gold, the kind of colors that make you pause and think about all the moments you've lived and the ones still waiting. Jake called me earlier that afternoon, asking if I wanted to join him for a walk in the park nearby. I agreed without hesitation. Sometimes those spontaneous invitations are the ones that mean the most. When I arrived, Jake was waiting by the entrance, his usual easy smile greeting me, but there was a nervousness in the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Michael was with him, of course, and the three of us started down the winding path, the crunch of fallen leaves beneath our feet mixing with the distant laughter of children playing. As we walked, Jake took my hand in his, a small, familiar gesture that instantly grounded me. I looked over at him, catching the soft gleam in his eyes. "What's on your mind?" I asked. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Grandma, there's something I want to show you. Something important." Curiosity piqued, I nodded, and we veered off the main path toward a quieter corner of the park, where an old oak tree stood, massive and wise, its branches stretching out like open arms. The air smelled earthy, mingled with the faint musk of moss and fallen pine needles. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I took it from him carefully, unfolding it to reveal a photograph. It was a picture of two men standing side by side, smiling, a candid shot that radiated warmth and tenderness. "Those are my dads," Jake said softly. "I wanted you to meet them, even if just through this photo. I've been meaning to tell you about them for a while." I looked at the picture again, then back at Jake, feeling a swell of emotion rise in my chest. "They look wonderful," I said, my voice thick. "Thank you for sharing this with me." He smiled, relief and pride mingling in his expression. I was afraid it might be too much all at once. "Never," I assured him. "Family isn't about how you look or who you love. It's about the bonds we build, the respect we hold, and the love we share." Michael reached out and squeezed Jake's other hand, his eyes meeting mine with a quiet gratitude. As we stood there beneath the ancient oak, the world around us seemed to hold its breath again, this time in a moment of understanding that went beyond words. Later, back at my house, we sat around the kitchen table once more, the soft glow of the evening lamp casting gentle shadows. We talked about Jake's childhood, his struggles to find his place, the joy he's found in embracing his true self. Michael shared stories of his own journey, of the challenges and the triumphs. For the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace settle in my heart. Watching these two men together, witnessing the strength of their love and the courage it took to be themselves, reminded me that life is full of surprises, some that scare us, some that inspire us, and some that change us forever. As the night wore on, Jake and Michael prepared to leave. Jake pulled me into a hug so tight I could feel his heartbeat steady and sure. "Thank you for accepting me, for seeing me," he whispered. I held him close, my own voice thick with emotion. "You've always been seen, Jake, and always will be." After they left, I sat back down by the window, looking out at the quiet street bathed in moonlight. The world outside seemed bigger somehow, filled with possibilities I hadn't dared to imagine before. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that the unexpected journey Jake had invited me on was not just about him. It was about learning to open my heart wider, to embrace change with grace, and to honor the deep, unspoken bonds that hold us together. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from the people we love and the moments when they choose to share their true selves with us. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm, one woven with the quiet comfort of understanding and the fresh excitement of discovery. Jake and I had found a new way to be with each other, richer and more honest than before. His visits became a little more frequent, sometimes just to share a cup of coffee, other times to linger over a long afternoon meal. Michael joined us often too, their presence filling the house with warmth and laughter. One afternoon, as the sunlight poured through the lace curtains and dust motes danced in the golden rays, Jake and I sat together in my favorite armchair by the window. Outside, the garden was bursting with color, tulips and daffodils nodding in the gentle breeze. The familiar scent of rosemary from the kitchen spilled in, wrapping around us like a quiet promise. Jake reached out and took my hand in his touch steady and sure. "Grandma," he said softly, "thank you for being my safe place, for accepting me when I needed it most." I smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "And thank you, Jake, for trusting me. You've taught me so much about courage and love." There was a pause, the kind that feels full instead of empty. I looked at him, really looked, at the man he'd become, strong yet vulnerable, brave enough to be himself in a world that isn't always kind. "Do you know what's changed the most?" I asked. He shook his head. "It's how I see the world now, and how I see myself. You showed me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, a daily act of faith and kindness." Jake nodded slowly. "That's beautiful, Grandma. I think I'm still learning that too." We sat there a while longer, the silence between us alive with all the things words couldn't hold. Later, when Jake and Michael left, I stood by the door watching them walk down the path, hand in hand. The soft click of the gate closing behind them felt less like an ending and more like a beginning. That night, as I settled into bed, I reflected on the journey we'd taken together. What started as a simple lunch visit had unfolded into a profound lesson in love, acceptance, and the power of being seen. Life, I realized, is unpredictable. It throws challenges our way, yes, but it also gives us moments of unexpected grace, moments that change everything if we're willing to open our hearts. Jake's courage to share his truth gave me a gift I never expected, a deeper connection not only to him but to myself. And in that connection, I found hope and peace. As the moon cast its silver light through the window, I whispered a quiet thank you to the stars, for family, for love, and for the beautiful surprise of change. Because sometimes the most ordinary days hold the most extraordinary moments, and those moments have the power to change everything.